You know what? We're going to start from verse 1. We're going to start from verse 1, right? And it read, for the Most High Power will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Yasharal, and set them in their own land, and who the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. Okay, so right here, when it's speaking about the so-called stranger, all right, it's not talking about the strangers of the other nations. Okay, it's talking about the stranger that's within Israel that you may not know of. Okay, verse 2, and the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Yasharal shall possess them in the land of the Most High Power for servants and handmaids, and they shall take them captives, who captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. Okay, now in this sense right here, this is referring to the strangers of the other nations that we're going to be ruling over. Okay, now the strangers that's being described in the book of Deuteronomy and the book of Leviticus, that's talking about the strangers of our nations. But right here in this sense, in verse 2, these are the strangers of the other nations that when we're back in rulership, we're going to be ruling over them, and they're going to be our servants. All right, but the original stranger that the Most High refers to as in Israel, helping them, like giving them food, giving them shelter, giving them clothing, garments, that's talking about the stranger within Israel of our people that we don't know personally, but they're still Israelites, so we have to help them as in rehearsing the righteous acts as a brother and sister, right? But like I said, but in this verse right here, verse 2, this is talking about the other nations, how we're going to have them in captivity, and we're going to be ruling over them, and they're going to be serving us, right? And they shall take them captives, who captives they were, as we are now, right? We're in captivity. We're behind enemy lines. We're not in our own homeland, right? Even if you don't consider Israel your homeland, and you just consider Africa your homeland, the west coast of Africa, South Africa, whatever, or even East Africa, Ethiopia, Eritrea, right? You're still not in your homeland. Okay, so basically you're still captive here. Okay, you can't even leave here. All right, if you choose to give up your citizenship, then yeah, you can leave, but you can't come back into America because you gave up your citizenship. Right, so you're going to have to go elsewhere and leave. And unfortunately, in this world today, a lot of these other countries is running their government just as the United States is running their government. You got to be a citizen of that country to reside there. Right, verse 3. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Most High Power shall give thee rest from thy sorrow, and from thy fear, and from the hard bondage wherein thou wast made to serve, and which we are doing now, right? Verse 4. Thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon. Okay, so that was talking about the past Babylon, but now we're in spiritual Babylon, because this place here picked up all of the customs and ordinances of ancient Babylon, right? And say, how hath the oppressor ceased? The golden city deceased. Okay, so right here, this is talking about this land. All right, and all of the other lands that's being governed by them. Okay, the United Kingdom. Okay, South Africa. All right, you have a majority of Europe. All right, you have Canada. All right, all of these areas where, you know, so-called devils are in rulership. Okay, the pale Canaanites, so to speak. Right. The Most High Power hath broken the staff of the wicked, and the scepters of the rulers. Okay, verse 6. He who smite the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he that ruled the nations in anger. Okay, who's the nations that's speaking about? That's speaking, you know, basically, you know, about the nations of Israel. You know, mainly about the nations of Israel. You know, let alone all the other heathen nations in the world, but mainly the nations of Israel, right? In anger and persecuted, and none hindereth. Okay, so just like in this world today, no one's coming to our rescue. No one's speaking up on our behalf for all of the wickedness that's being done to our people, right? So no one hindereth these devils from oppressing our people with a continual stroke, rule over us in anger, and no one's saying anything about it. No one's speaking up on our behalf, saying, "Hey, I mean, that's too much what you're doing to those people. Won't you let up off them a little bit? Give them a little bit of freedom. Give them a little bit of care, love. Let them rehearse their righteous acts to their God. Let them follow their ordinances instead of forcing them to keep our ordinances, right? Forcing them to keep vain, false idol worship and vain holidays as we're doing today, right? Just giving an idea of what's being spoken of here. So that's what's going on. No one is hindering these oppressors to stop oppressing our people, right? Verse 7, the whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into singing. Verse 8, yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee, and the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since thou art laid down, no feller is come up against us, right? Wow, Salaki, I just had a deja vu moment here. That's crazy, right? It felt like I've been reading this before right here in this same scenario, what I'm doing right now, right? Same time and all. But anyway, I digress. Verse 9, hell is beneath and moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. Hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. Okay? That means going away from here. It don't mean here already, right? It says hell from beneath what? The earth is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. Okay, so once again, this, like I said, in the book of Isaiah chapter 5 here. All right, so just as I said for Isaiah chapter 5, as it says here in the book of Isaiah chapter 14, what does that explain? If it says hell is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming, which is beneath, okay, what is that talking about? What is it beneath? Is it beneath you? Is it beneath me? Is it beneath the tree or something? What is it beneath? It's beneath the concrete, the asphalt. It's beneath the earth, right? So hell, just like I said before, it's known to be beneath the earth. All right, it's not in earth. Just like I said before, I give you that. If you want to say our people was in hell, in a hellish condition, we're at the bottom of the totem pole, we're at the bottom of society, we're being oppressed, we're being persecuted on a daily basis, being mocked, ridiculed, laughed at, whatever, right? I give you that. We're in a hellish condition. But this right here is specifically talking about what's beneath the earth. All right, so what else is talking about? Got to be talking about a spiritual hell to meet thee at thy coming, meaning you're going there. It don't mean you're going to remain here on earth and then hell is going to come up to you. It says you're going to be met at thy coming. So that's talking about a spiritual hell, man. Right? You got to be talking about it. If not, what else is talking about? Right? In continuation. All right, Salakia. Verse 10, and they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou also become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? Verse 11, thy pomp. Okay, we already looked up the definition of pomp, which is your celebration, your ceremony, right? Is brought down to the grave, okay? Killed, diminished, destroyed, right? Your pomp, your ceremony, okay? Your celebration, right? Is brought down to the grave. And the noise of thy vows, the worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. Verse 12. How art thou falling from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? Okay, so right here, this isn't talking about, the devil, or it is talking about the devil, but not in the sense of what most religious churchgoers believe. Okay, so when it says this right here, this isn't speaking about, so-called Satan on the earth, that's a red being with horns and a pitchfork and a long ass tail, right? This isn't talking about that. This is talking about a physical being that's on the earth that's called Lucifer, okay, which is also Satan, by the way. He's also Satan, but it's not the Satan and Lucifer who you think, who most religious churchgoers think. It's not a spiritual being. This is a being, physical being here on earth. So when it says, how hast thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, this is talking about someone falling from the hierarchy of society. Okay, the pyramid, the Ponzi pyramid, the top of the pyramid, right? Lucifer is at the top of this societal pyramid. He fell from heaven because Hamashiach has came to destroy him. Okay, so he fell from his hierarchy, his rulership in the earth. Okay, now he's brought down to the bottom of the pyramid. Okay, which is basically ultimately the Canaanite, the kinetic structure, right? Their structure is the pyramid, right? Because they don't have a god. So who the Canaanites worship is the person which is at the top of the hierarchy, the top of the pyramid. That's who their god is. That's who they worship. The Ponzi, the pyramid, right? In society, right? The people at the lower level of the pyramid, they uphold the hierarchy that's at the top folds of the pyramid. All right, so that's how it is. You oppress the ones that's at the bottom, with taxes and oppression and having to work for hire, right? And all sorts of other things. You keep them at the bottom, miseducation, misleading, deceiving through false religions and philosophies and dogmas and ideologies and everything else, right? You keep them at the bottom, keep them oppressed, and you tax the hell out of them and keep them working like mules to uphold the hierarchies of the pyramid, right? So that's the kinetic way of life. That's the kinetic Masonic structure. Okay, so Lucifer, which is a man in their society, that's who they worship. That's their God, right? It's not the Most High God, because the man that's at the top of the pyramid is trying to be like God, as it says in Scripture. He would try to be as the Most High, right? And he would place himself above the stars of heaven. That's not talking about the literal stars of heaven in the sky. That's talking about the children of Israel. We're known as the stars of the earth. Okay, so when Lucifer said that he's going to place his nest upon or above the stars of heaven, right? That's talking about us, which were the children of Israel, and our heaven was our homeland. That was our rest, right? We wasn't being worked like donkeys and mules. We wasn't taxed to the T, okay? We didn't have to pay bills, right? We didn't have to pay for mortgages, taxes, whatever, pay for water, pay for food, pay for produce, right? We was in heaven then, okay? So being that we was in heaven when our land was conquered due to sin, that's when Lucifer came in, right? Made war with us as the dragon, okay? And then he exiled us out of the land, and he killed off our mighty men during the war, because our people was fighting back, but the Most High wasn't with us because we were in sin. That's why we was overcame and exiled out of the land. The ones who surrendered, they was exiled or put into captivity. All right, and then the mighty man was killed off. Okay, so that's how Lucifer, placed his nest above the stars of heaven. All right, in our homeland over us, we are the stars. All right, so when it says, how hast thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, that means he fell from the hierarchy of rulership. Okay, it doesn't mean literal heaven, right? Lucifer wasn't cast out of heaven, right? See, this is a false philosophy and confusion that our people believe in, right? Because there was no disobedient angels in the spiritual realm of heaven. All angels obey the Most High, every single last one of them. So there was no angel that rebelled and fought against the Most High, was kicked out of heaven. That stuff is nonsense. That's BS, right? This is talking about a hierarchy here in the earth, right? There was no disobedient spirits to the Most High. That's crazy for you to believe that, man. For the well-seasoned, they know exactly what I'm talking about, right? But for those who are lost, hopefully that the Most High will give you the discernment and the wisdom and understanding to understand this. But this isn't talking about a spiritual being that disobeyed the Most High up in heaven, it was kicked out of heaven down into the earth. Now that's not talking about that. That's talking about a physical being here in the earth that was taken out of rulership and dropped from the top of the pyramid, man. The kinetic Masonic structure, right? Verse 13. For thou hast said in thy heart, I will ascend into heaven, okay? Not spiritual heaven, right? The homeland, right? Rest. I will exalt my throne above the stars of the Most High Power, and I will sit upon the mount, okay, which is the country of the congregation in the sides of the north, okay? So that's what he's talking about, from the northern kingdom, all right? That's when they invaded first, in the northern kingdom, right? I will ascend above the heights of the clouds, which is the chariots. I will be like the Most High, okay? Climbing up that pyramid, that hierarchy, that ladder, okay? The Masonic structure, right? The kinetic Masonic structure, okay? I will be like the Most High, like they think of themselves now. They think that they're God, okay? And I ain't talking about like the common, ordinary person. I'm talking about like the so-called elites, the controllers of this society. I ain't talking about the common person who you work with or you see on an everyday basis, right? Yet thou shalt be brought down low to hell, to the sides of the pit. Okay. Now right here, this is talking about hell on earth, right? When you're taken out of rulership. Okay. Now you're going to be dropped down to the bottom of society. You're going to be to the bottom of the totem pole, right? As we are, right? And you're going to be oppressed too. All right. Verse 16. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, okay, so this is right here. This is being used interjectively, right? First you're talking about the spiritual hell, and now you're talking about the hell literally here on earth, because how can it say right here, right in the very next verse, it says, they that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee. So this isn't talking about a spiritual sense. This is talking about a literal hell here, right? So you gotta learn when the switch comes. Okay, that's where the discernment comes in, right? They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, is this the man? Okay, it didn't say is this the spiritual being, right? This is after the switch here, right? So this isn't talking about, as it says here, when it says thy pomp shall descend into it, right? So there was a switch. When you look up the Strong's definition of these two hells, it's going to give you a different number. It's not going to have exactly the same number for the definition of these two hells. As it says here, hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming, right? But right here, and then it says right here also, yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. Okay, and then it says right here, they that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms? Okay, and they that see thee. So this is talking about in a physical sense, right? Verse 17, that made the world as a wilderness and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened not the house of his prisoners. Okay, who's the prisoners? The children of Israel. Okay, you made the world of Israel as a wilderness, and you destroyed the cities of Israel thereof, right? Verse 18, all the kings of the nations, even all of them, lie in the glory, every one in his own house. All right. Verse 19, but thou art cast out of thy grave like an abominable branch, and as the raiment of those that are slain, thrust through with the sword, that go down to the stones of the pit, as a carcass trodden under feet. All right. So right here, this is talking about all of the kings of the nations, even all of them lie in glory, even one in his own house. Okay. So that's talking about all of the other kings, right? That's when we're going to be brought back to our glory, right? The nation of Israel, when we're going to be put back on top, when so-called Lucifer is dropped from his hierarchy. All right. All of our kings is going to be put back into their own house, all of the tribes, right? Verse 20. Thou shalt not be joined with them in burial, because thou hast destroyed thy land, which is my land, and slain my people, which is thy people. The seed of evildoers shall never be renowned. Okay, so the devil's seed, right? The evildoers of the world, their seed is no longer going to be renowned, meaning there's going to be no revival of them. They're always going to be brought down low and held down low, oppressed. Right? Verse 21. Prepare slaughter for his children for the iniquity of their fathers, that they do not rise nor possess nor land nor fill the face of the world with cities. Okay, so this, like I said, they're not going to be renowned, and they're going to be brought down low and oppressed. All right. And then right here it says prepare slaughter for his children, because their descendants is living lavishly off all of the wickedness that they've done to our people over the years, over the centuries, all right, through chattel slavery, profiting from that, right? And then building up this society as it is today, right? And then all of their descendants is still practicing and doing the same things and still benefiting from it. All right, so this is why the slaughter is going to be prepared for their children. Although they go around saying, oh, well, it's not our fault. We haven't done anything. We haven't owned any slaves. We haven't have anyone in chattel slavery. We haven't whipped anyone with a whip on their back or whatever, right? We haven't sicked any dogs on them, right? We haven't done any predatory lending, taking their lands from up under them through taxes or whatever, right? But right here it says what? Prepare slaughter for his children. Okay? For the what? The iniquity of their what? Fathers. Okay? That they do not rise, nor possess the land, nor fill the face of the world with cities. For I will rise up against them, saith the Most High Power, and cut off what? Babylon. Okay? Now this is talking about spiritual Babylon, right? The name and the remnant, okay? And son and nephew, saith the Most High Power. So this right here is letting you know that the Most High is dealing with the man, okay? The seed follows the dad, all right? It's a man's world. Okay, so the men, not only the men, the women also too is going to be punished, but the Most High is dealing with the men because the seed follows the men. All right, verse 23. I will also make it a possession for the bittern and the pools of water, and I will sweep it with the besom of destruction, saith the Lord of hosts, which is the Most High of creation. All right, so right here the Most High isn't playing, man, and all of this is definitely, surely gonna come to pass, man, right?